You know, I laugh at the phrase "America first." The Tucker Carlson of the world. That
never heard of him.
And hopefully, have folks listen to folks like you to understand what's at stake. Had I been President Biden, I'd have pardoned President Trump.
Well, Mitt Romney gave an interview to MSNBC, and of course, they talked about Donald Trump and the trial, and he's had some very fascinating things to say, especially his deep, deep regret that Joe Biden did not pardon Donald Trump. Yeah, you heard that right. Now, we'll get into that in a moment and his rationale. But first, he had some criticism for those Republicans who went up to show support for Donald Trump up in the Kangaroo Court in Manhattan.
This week, leaders in the Republican Party went up to that trial, stood outside the courthouse, and attacked our legal system. How does that make you feel about Republicans right now?
Yeah, I think it's a terrible fault for our country to see people attacking our legal system. That's an enormous mistake. I think it's also demeaning for people to quite apparently try and run for vice president by donning the red tie and standing outside the courthouse.
Okay, so I'm going to let you finish. There's a lot of Mitt Romney. I know I interrupted early, but real fast here. He should have never accepted the premise of the question. They went up to attack the legal system. Yes, it's wrong to attack the legal system. This was not attacking the legal system. These aren't the people who are marching, calling our system of justice systemically racist and calling to defund the police and stack the courts. And no, that's the left. That's not. This is not the system of justice they're protesting or demeaning. It's this court, it's this judge, it's these charges, it's this DA. And the fact that Mitt Romney can't wrap his brain around that is kind of sad, pathetic, and despicable, but we've become used to that, sadly. But that last thing that he said there, real fast.
I think it's also demeaning for people to quite apparently try and run for vice president by donning the red tie and standing outside the courthouse.
It's demeaning for people to campaign for vice president by donning the tie and standing outside. Hey, Mitt, is this you? Demeaning? It's demeaning to go up there and audition for the job of vice president. That's you, right? That gotta be you. That ain't a lookalike, is it? That's you. That's you having dinner at a Michelin 3-star restaurant in Trump Tower when President-elect Donald Trump was talking to people about possibly being Secretary of State. That's you, man. You feel a little demeaned, do you? Look at that look on Trump's face. Look at that expression. All right, Mitty. Back to what you were saying.
It's just, I'd have felt awkward were I one of those individuals. But I can also say, I think President Biden made an enormous error. He should have fought like crazy to keep this prosecution from going forward. It was a win-win for Donald Trump. If Donald Trump is exonerated.
Is that Joe Biden's job, or is that shouldn't there be a separation?
I've been around for a while. If LBJ had been president and he didn't want something like this to happen, he'd have been all over that prosecutor saying, you better not bring that forward or I'm.
Boy, this is incredibly revealing and quite an admission. Mitt Romney right now is admitting that he knows what we all know, and that is that this thing is highly political. And if Joe Biden wanted to stop this, he could have picked up the phone and stopped it. And of course, we know that to be true. But here's what Mitt Romney hasn't put together, because I guess he just doesn't think about these things. But if Joe Biden could have picked up the phone to his attorney general like Lyndon Johnson and put a halt to all of these cases against Donald Trump, that also means that Joe Biden could pick up the phone, just like Lyndon Johnson, and ordered these cases against Donald Trump. You can't have one without the other, Mitty. Sorry. And he's admitting it. He's admitting it right there, that this thing is political, and Biden could have stopped it. Also, I love this whole, it's win-win for Trump either way. Yeah, where the hell were you a year ago? You know, now you see the polls. Now you see how it's playing out. Now you learn the facts about how highly politicized these cases are and what a complete clown show the prosecutors are in Manhattan and Fani Willis in Atlanta. Now it's easy afterwards to say, this was always going to be win-win either way for Donald Trump. But he wasn't saying that then, was he? All right, a little bit more here.
I'm going to drive you out of office.
But I'm pretty sure you support having separate but equal branches of government.
I do, but I also, let me tell you, I mean, you may disagree with this, but had I been President Biden, When the Justice Department brought out indictments, I would have immediately pardoned him. I'd have pardoned President Trump. Why? Well, because it makes me, President Biden, the big guy, and the person I pardoned, the little guy. And number two.
We'll get to number two in a minute. But I got to tell you, this is, I got to tell you, one of the most heartbreaking things for me in my modern political life is the last 12 years watching this man so diminishing himself. In my view, in the view of so many Americans, so many Republicans that supported him. Think about it. It was 12 years ago when he secured the nomination. And I was so ready for him to beat Barack Obama. And it is just heartbreaking to see where he is right now. Understand what he just said. This is a guy who always says character is the most important thing. Character above all else, even above policy. Character, character, character. This man, the champion of character, just said that the president of the United States should have used the awesome power of the political pardon. Excuse me. The awesome power of the judicial pardon for purely political purposes. If I were President Biden, I would have pardoned Donald Trump because he was innocent, because the charges are bogus, because this is unconstitutional, because this is a bad precedent to set, because no former president ever had to face something like this, because there's no actual law that was broken, certainly in the case of the Atlanta charge, or in the case of the Manhattan charges. You know, all the reasonable reasons why you should pardon somebody, because he's suffered enough, because he's repentant, because of all of the reasons why a president would pardon somebody. He disregards all of them. He thinks Joe Biden, if I were President Biden, I would have pardoned Trump. Why? For purely political purposes, to make me look good, to diminish Trump, and to keep him from having a victory. That, I gotta say, I mean, listen, I respect the honesty, but that's despicable. It's despicable that Mitt Romney, a man who could have been president and who has been a senator for the last 6 years, that Mitt Romney views the power of the pardon through purely political lenses. I mean, that's how a Democrat thinks, so okay.
It's not going to get resolved before the election. It's not going to have an impact before the election. And frankly, the country doesn't want to have to go through prosecuting a former president. I think the American people have recognized that President Trump did have an inappropriate affair with someone who was a porn star. I think they realized that. I think they realized he took classified documents.
Hold on. There's no reason to have this trial because the American people already know that he had an inappropriate relationship with a porn star. First of all, the only person who is claiming that is the person who has already perjured herself twice on this, because once she said it never happened. Now she's saying it did happen. But of course, the story she's telling about how it did happen is different than the first story she told 6 years ago about how it did happen. But set all of that aside. He's not on trial for having a sexual relationship with a porn star. That's not illegal. But boy, again, Mitt Romney gives away the store. Mitt Romney reveals exactly what this is all about, and he knows it. So where was he? He didn't say, hey, the American people already know that he falsified financial records having to do with the payment of a non-disclosure agreement to a porn star, because that's what he's on trial for. So when these charges were brought and the trial began, why didn't Mitt Romney say, this is ridiculous, there's no crime here? This is just Democrats trying to drag Trump through the slime by having everyone know that he had an illegal or inappropriate relationship. What Mitt Romney is revealing all by himself here about everything is absolutely stunning. Usually politicians don't say and reveal all of this out loud, but he is doing it, and he thinks he's on the right side of these issues. He has no idea what he's doing here.
He shouldn't have and didn't handle them properly. I think they understand that as well. I think they realize he's been lying about the election in 2020. They know those things. So these things are not changing the public attitude. And frankly, we ought to get beyond these and focus on the big issues that really matter to the American people: our inflation, our border, what's happening around the world, America's involvement in the world. And I think President Biden and President Trump would do best focusing on the future for this great country.
Well, Donald Trump is focusing on those issues. Actually, it's the Democrats on the left and your pals in the media, like that woman sitting across from you on MSNBC, who are just focusing on the trials, Mitt. But listen, hey, glad that he said all of that, because it's good to have him on the record about it. Just, completely hypocritical and sadly beyond politics. A little bit more from Mitt Romney here and his interview on MSNBC.
People have been screaming about the border for all 3.5 years Joe Biden has been president, and he has not done anything to solve the problem at the border. That's a huge issue for President Trump. I can't understand why President Biden didn't tackle this from the very beginning. But
hold on. Tackle it from the very beginning. He caused it from the very beginning. I can't understand why Joe Biden hasn't done anything. Oh, he's done something. He reversed everything that Trump had put in place, and he's caused the problem. And then they're going to bicker back and forth. Stephanie Ruhle is going to again take up the Democrat talking point that, well, there was a bill that came out of the Congress.
Congress done, because it's Congress who sets the laws.
Well, the Republicans have put forward our plan. The House put out a border plan. And that's what Congress did. The president said, no, that wasn't acceptable. Then they began working on a bipartisan basis. But you know what? This was not a problem when President Trump was president. The reality is,
the border has been a problem for years, sir. And a plan was just put together, and it was Donald Trump, who's not currently in office, who blocked it.
Yeah, he blocked the plan in part, I'm sure, because he wants to keep this issue hot and alive for his election. But don't forget, when he was president, he did a lot of things that sounded pretty ugly, but we didn't have anywhere near the number of people that have come into the country illegally as we have under President Biden. And that's something he should have done everything in his power. Frankly, take some actions that maybe the courts would have stopped. Then he'd have had a better argument saying, hey, Congress needed to act. But he never did that. And as a result, the American people are saying, hey, I want something else.
He's so close. He's so close, except for that lie that Donald Trump blocked it because he wanted the issue for the election. No, he blocked it because it wasn't going to solve the problem, and it was going to tie his hands once he became president, where he's really going to solve the problem. No, the border has not been a disaster for years. In fact, it was finally under control during the 4 short years that Donald Trump was in office. He's so close to getting it, and yet he refuses to because he's just blocked by his visceral hatred of Donald Trump and his desire to be the guy that everyone at the MSNBC studios love. Oh, you're one of the good Republicans. Now, boy, they hated him back when he stood in the way of Barack Obama's second term, and he still doesn't get that either. A little more.
It's to someone like me, it's unimaginable that in the party of Ronald Reagan and George Herbert Walker Bush and George W. Bush and John McCain and others, that we would see a growing isolationism within our party. I think it flows in part from talk TV, talk radio, the Tucker Carlson of the world. That
Never heard of him.
Exactly. That say outrageous things, and the base says, yeah, exactly. And so many in our party have followed that populist streak, which is, hey, stop worrying about the rest of the world. Just worry about what's going on here. What they're forgetting is that we are connected to the rest of the world, that our economy is connected to the rest of the world, that if we'd have had that attitude, then Germany would have ended up ruling the world. All right, we're involved in the world out of our own self-interest. I laugh at the phrase America first. I know it typically means, isolationism, but really, America is putting ourselves first when we're involved in the world, when we stop bad people. Look, if Vladimir Putin goes not just through Ukraine, but then decides to go into Poland, then we're involved in conflict with our sons and daughters going to war. Or we could walk away from NATO, in which case Putin is going to keep on going and going. How about a world where China and Russia control the world and we have our own little island? That's not a world where Americans are going to be safe or prosperous. We're safe and prosperous when the world follows the orders that have existed over the last 75 years with a strong NATO, strong allies, strong friends, and where America stands for something like freedom.
Boy, he was really close to saying the new world order or the world orders. And he said the orders. Take that out of your vocabulary. It's creepy as hell. Imagine a world where China and Russia are working together. That's the world that Biden's policies have created. That wasn't a world that we had when Trump was in there. I laugh at America first, We're putting America first. But, it's a fascinating little exchange there where he said, everyone says, why are you worrying about Ukraine? Why don't you worry about us here at home? But see, by taking care of Ukraine, we are taking care of ourselves at home. That's an interesting response. And I understand where he's coming from. But hear me out for a second, Mr. Romney, Senator Romney, excuse me. Because listen, you've been a governor, you're a senator, you ran for president. Obviously, you know this stuff a lot better than I do. But once in a while, I think I'm pretty good at putting words together and coming up with, some kind of what way of making an argument. Communicate. Hear me out. Imagine if the American people said, why are we spending all this money and putting all this focus on Ukraine? Why don't you take care of the problems here? Instead of saying, shut your mouth because helping Ukraine ultimately helps us. Instead of saying that, which is basically what you've been saying. Instead, how about you say this? We will take care of the problems here, and we'll be able to help Ukraine. Could you try that? Could you try? Because all we ever hear, and by the way, this isn't just conservatives. I remember during 20 years of war in Afghanistan, I remember Barack Obama running for president against John McCain, saying we're spending money building roads and schools in Afghanistan when the roads and schools in America are deteriorating. And guess what? He was right. And the answer is always the same. Shut your mouth. We know what we're doing. This is important. And it never occurs to any of these conservatives that maybe the right answer is we should be building roads and schools here too. We should be protecting our border, not just Ukraine's border. With them, it's one or the other. Why can't it be both and? Because that truly is a pretty tangible America first, isn't it? He had one other thing to say that actually is even more revealing than anything else during this interview. If you're wondering what Mitt Romney's plans are when he leaves the Senate coming up this January, this may be a clue.
And if they can't trust
Can you think of an example of a Democratic president who tried to hold up the certification of the newly elected Republican?
I'm not enough of an historian to be able to go back.
I know you know the answer to that.
I know there were a number of senators and Congress people that tried to hold up the certification of state electors in the past. So that had happened before. It was squashed, and it was squashed in 2020. I presume that will be again. I hope so. Our institutions held, but you can't be 100% confident that they'll hold again. Look, there's no question, but that when you have a person running for president who is not willing to say, I believe the outcome of an election, that's a threat to democracy. And when you weaken our judicial system, when you weaken the FBI, these are things that strike at the heart of democracy. And that's one of the reasons we're fighting as hard as we are to shore up these institutions, tell people the truth about them, and hopefully have folks listen to folks like you to understand what's at stake.
There you go. American people need to know what's at stake here. So I hope they watch more MSNBC. Speechless. Absolutely speechless. But I hope Mitt Romney enjoys his second career, or at this point, probably his fifth or sixth career, as a political analyst on MSNBC. He's going to be great on Meet the Press. I'm so excited to see that. Election night with Mitt Romney giving analysis with Chuck Todd and Rachel Maddow is going to be brilliant. In fact, if you blur your eyes a little bit and squint, he and Rachel Maddow have the same hairdo. So there's that.